At no level of basketball could this ever be a technical foul on Kelsey Mitchell. Oh, A'Ja Wilson's on the court. That changes everything. So if A'Ja Wilson fouls you on a layup, you're going to get a technical.
The Las Vegas Aces stormed onto the floor throwing everything but clean basketball. From flying elbows to bodies collapsing in over-exaggerated flops and referees swallowing their whistles, the chaos was immediate. Vegas believed brute force and physical intimidation would rattle the Indiana Fever, but Indiana never blinked. Every shove delivered by A'Ja Wilson, every cheap tactic meant to slow the Fever down, was countered with grit, fast pace, and a direct response. And when Kelsey Mitchell began draining dagger after dagger, silencing the arena in the process, it wasn't just points on the board, it was revenge being served. This night wasn't only about stealing a victory, it was about exposing the Aces' dirty tricks and shoving their arrogance back in their faces. And after enduring Wilson's antics all game long, Kelsey Mitchell had some words that drove the message home. Stick around, because you'll want to hear what she had to say. Comment down below what you think of A'Ja Wilson and the officiating in this game, because this one was wild. Let's get into it. This was supposed to be a celebration of A'Ja Wilson's greatness. Before the ball even went up, she had already made history. But the game that followed served as a brutal reminder that the playoff road isn't going to be easy. The Indiana Fever, the number 6 seed, came into Vegas and pulled off the upset, defeating the Aces 89-73 to claim Game 1. Hours before tip-off, the spotlight shined entirely on Wilson as she collected her MVP trophy. The crowd and the franchise expected the night to double as a coronation, a reminder of Vegas's dominance and its place at the top of the league. But by the time the final buzzer sounded, that trophy didn't look like a crown, it looked like a distraction. The moment meant to reinforce the Aces' aura instead set the stage for their unraveling. From the opening quarter, nothing came easy, and everything they assumed would be handed to them was ripped away. And so, A'Ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces found themselves dropping Game 1 on their home floor, 89-73, to a short-handed Indiana Fever squad. From start to finish, Indiana had control of the game. Yes, there was a small stretch in the third quarter where it looked like Vegas might mount a comeback. Fans began to wonder, would the Aces flip the switch? Could they storm back? But just as quickly, Kelsey Mitchell and Odyssey Sims answered emphatically, no. Not tonight. Their resilience ensured Vegas never closed the gap. Heading into the matchup, the narrative was already cemented by the media. Vegas was painted as unstoppable, the inevitable winners, while Indiana was written off as nothing more than background noise. Pundits cited the Fever's mounting injuries as proof they had no chance. Caitlin Clark was sidelined, Sophie Cunningham was unavailable, Sydney Colson was out, and the list of missing players kept growing, 6 players gone in total. Most commentators barely gave Indiana a mention outside of being the opponent's name on the schedule. Vegas had the pedigree, the banners, the championships, and the swagger. Indiana supposedly didn't belong on the same stage. Even Aces coach Becky Hammon added fuel to the fire, reminding the press that Indiana hadn't seen the real Aces yet. Translation? This was supposed to be a beatdown. Hammon even spelled it out in pre-game interviews, brushing off Indiana's 2 wins over Vegas during the regular season as irrelevant. She said the Aces were in turmoil back then, that Indiana caught them at a weak point, and that this time would be different. The message was clear, the so-called real Aces were about to show up. But here's the twist, while Vegas was feeding its own hype, Indiana was being completely dismissed. Analysts weren't even bothering to break down their game plan, and that kind of disrespect turned into a gift for the Fever. Because when nobody expects you to win, the pressure vanishes. You play free. And from the very first possession, Indiana looked like a team unchained. They turned the Aces' celebration into their own showcase, and Kelsey Mitchell led the way with a playoff career-high 34 points, spoiling Wilson's MVP night with an emphatic 89-73 upset. After the game, even Becky Hammon admitted her team's flaws. She said the Aces lacked the physicality and effort needed in the second half. They died on screens, failed to show second and third efforts, and simply didn't work hard enough to recover defensively. That level of honesty revealed just how thoroughly Indiana had taken it to them. The Fever didn't shrink from the spotlight. They pushed the tempo, zipped the ball around with purpose, and executed sharper than the reigning two-time champions. Meanwhile, Vegas, for all its chest-thumping, looked flat. They hesitated. They second-guessed themselves. The weight of expectation shifted off Indiana and landed squarely on the Aces. The champs, the team with rings and experience, suddenly looked rattled against an underdog who refused to fold. And here's the kicker. In a best-of-5 playoff series, 72% of teams that win Game 1 go on to win the series. That means this upset wasn't just about one victory, it was a seismic shift in the balance of power. And it happened in Vegas's own house. The turning point wasn't a single shot or run. It was Indiana's refusal to cave when the Aces tried to bully them. Once the Fever made it clear they weren't going anywhere, Vegas abandoned clean basketball. They stopped trusting their system, abandoned their offensive flow, and leaned into physical antics. The coronation crumbled into desperation. Lexi Hull was shoved, elbowed, and screened illegally all game long, yet somehow the whistles rarely blew in her favor. Replays showed moving screens, blatant pushes, and elbows flying, but instead of breaking, Indiana got stronger. And leading the way in Vegas's meltdown was none other than A'Ja Wilson. Instead of setting the tone with her skill, she leaned into elbows, theatrics, and flopping. Off-ball, she threw forearms, wedged herself into Fever players after whistles, and shoved during transitions when no defense was even being played. Her flops were so dramatic they bordered on embarrassing, throwing herself to the floor as if hit by a truck, only for replays to show incidental contact at best. At one point, she literally hooked an opponent's arm, dragged herself down, and acted like she had been fouled. These weren't power moves, they were desperation tactics from a superstar losing control of the game. Her teammates followed her lead. Jackie Young lowered her hips like a linebacker setting screens. Off-ball defenders leaned in shoulders and elbows on players who couldn't even see the contact coming. The so-called physical play was really just Vegas trying to disrupt Indiana's rhythm and drag the game into chaos. But instead of rattling the Fever, it fueled them. Kelsey Mitchell demanded the ball even more, drilling clutch shots that silenced the Vegas crowd. Odyssey Sims locked up on defense with relentless intensity. Natasha Howard and Brianna Turner battled in the paint, holding their ground without retaliating, showing discipline while refusing to back down. Every cheap shot backfired, sharpening Indiana's focus instead of breaking it. That's the irony. The Aces, the team with the MVP, the rings, and the experience, were supposed to be the calm, composed group. Instead, they were the ones unraveling. And nowhere was that clearer than in A'Ja Wilson's performance. Hours earlier, she had held the MVP trophy in her hands. But in the game itself, Aaliyah Boston turned that crown into a weight. Boston bodied up Wilson every possession, holding her to just 6 for 22 shooting. That's not dominance, that's a superstar getting humbled. By the end of the night, the contrast between the two stars couldn't have been more stark. Boston was calm, disciplined, and locked in. Wilson complained to refs, flopped for calls, and forced bad shots. One player looked like a leader ready for the biggest stage. The other looked like someone believing her own headlines. The Fever didn't just steal a win, they stole the narrative. For the first time in over a decade, Indiana walked away with a semi-final victory, and they did it by dismantling the aura of the two-time defending champs. The same night Wilson was celebrated as the face of the league, she was humbled in front of her own fans. And when Kelsey Mitchell finally spoke after her 34-point masterpiece, her words carried the weight of truth: respect your opponent, but never underestimate your own effort. Now, history is already leaning Indiana's way. With 72% of Game 1 winners advancing, the Fever know the math is on their side. Vegas, on the other hand, faces the unthinkable: drop Game 2 at home, and they'll head to Indianapolis with elimination hanging over them. The adjustments are obvious. They'll try to clamp Mitchell tighter, get Wilson easier looks inside, and slow the pace. But the pressure has shifted entirely onto the Aces. Indiana, meanwhile, is loose, fearless, and believing. Stephanie White has them locked in, and their togetherness is contagious. Game 1 wasn't a fluke, it was a blueprint. Indiana proved that a team written off, missing 6 players, and facing the league's supposed juggernaut could still play smarter, tougher, and freer. And if they do it again, the Aces could be staring at a collapse no MVP trophy can cover up. The Fever didn't just win. They took Vegas's confidence, their home court, and their aura of invincibility. Now the real question isn't whether Indiana belongs, it's whether Vegas has enough left to survive. Comment below what you think of A'Ja Wilson and the referee's handling of this game. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an update. Click the video on your screen, and we'll see you in the next one.